With NewsNation. You are joining me from, I'm in Washington, D.C. We are once again following a pretty big Supreme Court case that came down, obviously, last week, bringing the monumental decision with the Roe v. Wade case out of Mississippi that, again, led to the Roe v. Wade case being overturned. You can see this football coach here. His name is Joe Kennedy. This Supreme Court case comes out of Washington State. It's Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, and it involves that football coach you saw just right there. He's a assistant high school football coach, and after games, he would hold prayers at the 50-yard line after games. Sometimes it would involve players, but he would go to the 50-yard line and conduct prayers. The school district ended up asking him to stop doing that for fear of just, combining religion with school. This was a public school in Washington State, so that's an important note right there. And we'll get back to that in just a little bit. But that ended up leading to Mr. Kennedy, Coach Kennedy, being put on administrative leave. Again, all for these prayers that happened at the 50-yard line. And then Mr. Kennedy sued the school, and that led to this big court battle. It didn't just go straight to the Supreme Court. It had to work its way up through federal court. What's interesting is that the lower courts issued sort of the decisions first in all this. They said that Mr. Kennedy was hired, for an influential role with students, and that his speech as a government employee was not protected, didn't get as much protection under the First Amendment. So that led to all these challenges going up to the Supreme Court. And then so today, after oral arguments in this case back in April, today they issued this decision from the Supreme Court. Again, Kennedy versus Bremerton, 6-3. The conservative judges ruling that the Washington, this high school football coach in Washington State has the right to pray on the field with his students. Again, a lot of legal analysts were watching this case saying, it's kind of like the rights of government workers and free speech and the free exercise of religion and faith versus the Constitution and that endorsement of religion. That the Constitution kind of prohibits that and calls for that separation of church and state. So again, this was a really fascinating case to follow. Mr. Kennedy, again, who you see right there, they had oral arguments in this case back in April, and he afterwards spoke to news reporters saying that he felt very confident that the judges were going to rule in his favor. And during those oral arguments, the judges kind of seemed sympathetic towards this coach. So again, this is not necessarily a surprise, but it's a big decision. Again, as we said, this was kind of the rights of government workers, free speech and free exercise of faith versus the Constitution and its separation of church and state. So some interesting decisions and some interesting opinions we were reading for all this. Neil Gorsuch obviously came out. He's one of the more conservative justices on the court, appointed by President Donald Trump, named to the court by President Donald Trump. He, during his opinion, he said, personal religious observance, government can't suppress that. Again, I'll say that again. Personal religious observance, the government can't suppress that. And so he ruled in favor of the coach, and he said it was kind of misguided reasoning that the school district gave to the coach for putting him on administrative leave. Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in the dissent for all this. She said the Constitution, this was kind of a disservice, as she said in her own words, a disservice to the separation of church and state. So very interesting whenever you combine religion and sort of the rights of people, and again, against the Constitution. A lot of, faith groups are obviously watching this case, and it's not uncommon to see these sort of prayers. I used to cover high school football in rural Virginia, and this, it's pretty common to see prayers on the field after games. Sometimes both teams would come together and have a prayer at the 50-yard line. So this was interesting to see sort of how the judges would rule in all of this. We did hear New York Times as a quick statement from Coach Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy, saying that it's so awesome, this decision, and he's looking forward to being back on the field with his players. But note to some of our viewers, if you are listening right now, feel free to drop in any questions regarding all this. Again, some of the Supreme Court stuff can be tough to follow, and it always brings up interesting questions. Sometimes the questions can be simple as far as what this means moving forward. Just offhand and just a quick take on this as far as, the impact of it, what it could mean moving forward. Again, basically, this formally allows prayer at 50-yard lines of football games. So, if anyone had any doubts of maybe holding prayer, I don't think he ever encouraged the players to join him. This was just something he sort of did that maybe players would join with him on the 50-yard line. So again, this kind of promotes maybe practicing your faith, holding prayers during sports games or during school events. So what we'll see maybe in regards to this is people feeling more comfortable to practice their faith in a school setting like this. Again, this is just coming down earlier today, but it's an interesting case to follow here. And it follows, again, a monumental week with the Supreme Court, not only with Roe v. Wade. Obviously, that got a ton of attention, rightfully so, just with the implications with that, no matter how you fall on the issue, very big implications with that case. But there was a case that originally stemmed out of Maine, and the justices ruled in favor of religious rights when they were saying that the state could not exclude religious schools from a tuition program. Again, that case came down just last week. So these are two very big cases. Again, Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, and then this one with the Maine private school that was it's a religious school trying to get in on this tuition program. And there was questions over whether a religious school could take part in this tuition program, being a private school, being a religious school, and with the state offering this to public schools. But again, in both cases, a win for religious rights. So, and again, just a quick recap if you're just joining us now. This case comes out of Washington State. It's Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. This high school football coach would hold prayers on the 50-yard line during games. Again, you see him holding a football in this picture right here, just outside the school district. Probably would look very similar if you went to a football game and saw him praying at the 50-yard line after a win, after a loss. Maybe some players joined him. The school district, though, raised concerns about that, saying that they were worried about, they said they asked him to stop doing that at games. Again, that's the stadium you see right there, as you can imagine, after games, seeing him pray at the 50-yard line just like that, set up for soccer in this picture, but he's a football coach. But he was placed on administrative leave, and then as a result, he sued the school for their response to it all. But we are seeing lower courts it ruled in favor of the school district. And they were, the lower courts were saying that his speech as a government employee, he wasn't necessarily had as much protections under the First Amendment because he was a government employee and he was in an influential role with these students being an assistant football coach. So, but again, he sued the school, challenged it up through the courts, and despite those lower court rulings, the Supreme Court came out in favor of him today, voting 6-3. And again, Neil Gorsuch, one of the more conservative members of the court, saying that personal religious observance, the government can't suppress that. So again, an interesting case. Looks like we have one question coming in. What other rulings are we expecting from the Supreme Court? I know there's some opinion days potentially later this week. We've been really focused. I mean, gosh, when you think of all these major cases coming down, just last week and just the fallout from that, we've been covering the protests across the country in regards to Roe v. Wade being overturned. So we were following that one. And again, this other case out of Maine also dealing with religious freedom, that the state could not exclude religious schools from taking part in a tuition program. That's another big win for religious freedom. And as we begin to wrap this up, NewsNation's going to be following this. We're going to take a closer look into some of the, statements from the Supreme Court justices following this decision today. A big one, no matter where you fall in this issue, this is going to be impacting school districts and maybe people practicing their faith, after school, functions or school sports games. And it's, no matter where you fall in the issue, this is going to bring an impact all across the country. And it kind of asserts that right to prayer on the field with students for this coach. So he's looking forward again to coming back and getting back on the team with his the students and the players. He said that earlier today, and he called this football coach in Washington State, Joe Kennedy, the one who originally sued and brought this to the Supreme Court, calling his decision so awesome. Big win for religious freedom today with this case. Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. the Supreme Court justices voting in favor of this high school football coach and his right to prayer on the field with students. And again, we'll have more coverage of this on Rush Hour later today. Thanks for joining us, everybody.